Hey guys, since this is the first review on this channel, before I get into anything involving the game, I'm gonna play a video kind of explaining my rules and general rating guidelines for reviews on this channel, and I will also be posting that as a separate video, which I will link in every review. So just thought I'd play it in the beginning of this first review, just so everybody kind of knows. So listen if you haven't already. Skip to about 10 minutes if you've already seen the video. Thanks. Hey guys, this is just a video to explain the rules and basic rating system for any reviews I'll be doing on this channel. When I talk about the rating system and some of the rules, I'll be referring to all products as games just in this video, because it's much simpler for me just to refer to everything as a game. But I will also be trying to review different things like TV shows, animes, maybe albums, just anything I find worth reviewing. So let's jump right into it. First, we're going to start with rating system. The rating system I'm going to be using for the reviews here. I'm going to be using a rating system of 1 through 10 with intervals of 0.5. So 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, stuff like that. I'll explain what all the ratings mean. A 10 is a game that I consider the pinnacle of a game. It's groundbreaking, it's innovative, it's amazing. There's just really nothing you can dock it for. This game will be anywhere from perfect to slightly less than perfect. It might have a couple tiny flaws, but it's nothing that will break or even hinder an experience in the slightest. This game cannot be missed. It's basically, it's perfect. It's a perfect score. You can't miss it, no matter what you're into. A 9 denotes a score for a game that is amazing. It doesn't quite reach perfection or flawlessness, but it's still very good. It's very innovative, very groundbreaking. It's a very nice game. There's not much bad you could say about it. There might be a couple flaws to the game, but they won't hinder the gameplay at all. The game, for the most part, is just spotless and fantastic. Should not be missed. Maybe a few people won't pick it up, but it should not be missed if it's a 9. 8. 8 is a great game. I would consider it great. It's a very solid outing. It does some innovative things, but there's a couple flaws that might hinder the game experience a tiny bit. Nothing that will really frustrate you or annoy you too much, but it's enough to kind of make you go, okay, there's a few people who won't like some of the stuff they did in here. It'll be a very innovative game, it'll be a very fun game, but it won't do much more than that. It'll just be very solid. A 7 denotes a game that is very good. It's not great, it's not amazing, but it's good. Most people will enjoy this game. It tries to do some innovative things. It may have a few flaws that hinder the gaming experience, but for the most part, people will enjoy it. It'll be fun. Probably a good game you want to pick up unless your budget's tight or you're not a fan of a certain series. So if you just have some money to spend, maybe pick up a game that has a 7. A 6 I consider an okay game. It's very meh. It won't do anything incredibly innovative or groundbreaking, but there's some fun gameplay. Maybe it's more of the same, but they do it in a fun way. It'll be a relatively tight game. I'd say most people, maybe 50-50, will enjoy it. So like 50% of people might enjoy it, and it'll be worth picking up if you've got some extra money. But there will be flaws in the game that hinder the experience, maybe even frustrate you a little bit, but for the most part, it'll be good. A 5 denotes a game that is subpar. We're starting to get into kind of more negative reviews when you talk about 5 and below. A 5 is subpar. It's not quite what you'd expect from an industry standard for a game or product. It's very lackluster, whether it's generic or there's some gameplay element that kind of breaks it, or there's bugs or something. It's just not quite what you're looking for. You probably want to stay away from this unless you're really into whatever series it's from, or you're really into the concept of it. you should probably stay away from it. There will be a few people who enjoy this kind of game, but not many. A 4 out of 10 denotes a game that is bad. We're starting to get negative now. A bad game would be a 4. It tries to do something, but it either just fails or there's just not enough good in there to outweigh the bad. There might be some game-breaking flaws in it. There will definitely be things that hinder the experience and frustrate you. A game like this should probably be avoided unless you're a die-hard fan of a series or you just really need some time to waste, but this denotes a very bad game. A 3 is terrible. I would consider this a terrible game if it is a 3. It will have some game-breaking glitches in it. It probably won't be any fun. I would recommend everybody to stay away from a game of 3 or below. Even if you're a die-hard fan of the series, it's probably not a game you can actually play. It might be broken in some way. There's really little to no redeeming qualities here. A 2 is awful. Just awful. A 2 denotes a score that is just going to frustrate you and make you want to break keyboards or controllers. Game-breaking flaws run rampant through games like this. I mean, there probably won't be a story or a very shitty story. It's basically a waste of time. These games should not be even considered to be bought, in my opinion. And, or if in the case of a TV show, watched. Just don't even bother with these. And finally, the king of all shit. A score of 1. As you can see, I'm so angry even thinking about what a game of 1 would be like. I didn't even bother to really put a lot of effort into drawing anything for this animation. But a 1 is just the pinnacle of a piece of shit. If there is anything more rare than a 10 that I will give a game, it is a 1. A 1 denotes a game that is so bad, it will actually insult you intellectually, from a gameplay standpoint. If you paid any money for a game with a 1, you will most likely be raging, breaking controllers, throwing small children out of windows. This game will piss you off. You will need to bury this game in landfills, burn it, like buy more copies of the game and burn them just to feel satisfied from how much you hate a game with a 1 score. And yeah, that basically sums up the rating system. Now just for some basic rules. What I consider average. A lot of people who do reviews and rating say, oh, a 5 is an average game. And I don't agree with that, because I see people who say, oh, a 5 is an average game for me, and then the average score of their reviews is like a 7. That doesn't denote an average game. An average game is something I would consider average of an industry standard. So when you buy games, you kind of expect a certain quality from a game. So an average score would not be a 5 if you're giving most games a 7 or an 8. And your average review score is like a 7 or an 8. The average would be a 7 or 8, right? So that's kind of what I'm going for. Most of the games I've played, I give somewhere between a 6 and a 10. So I'm going to say an average game in today's market will probably drift somewhere between a 7 and an 8. So anything below a 7 is probably below average, and anything above 8 is probably above average, unless specified in a review. Or an 8, I will give an 8 an above average score. So it's either average or slightly above. But yeah, that's just kind of my review, my thoughts on the whole average number thing. I will probably be dividing each of my reviews into several different sections. So for instance, if it was a game, I'm going to split it into graphics, sound, story, gameplay, stuff like that, and then I'll kind of go through each of them separately and at the end give a final score. So yeah, that's kind of just the basics of the reviews that are going to be happening on this channel. So yeah, can't wait to get started on them, or if I already am started on them. But yeah, just some basic rules and definitions for anybody watching reviews on my channel. Alright. Hey guys, this is Cameron, and I'm here to review the game Gunpoint, the 2D noir side-scroller that mixes action, stealth, and strategy into one unique game. The basic setup for this game is that Richard Conway is a freelance detective who's just purchased his bullfrog pantaloons that allow him to jump long distances. And Richard Conway gets caught up in a corporate scandal and some cover-ups, and the story kind of evolves from there around a few companies and some side characters. So first we'll start with story. The story gets pretty complex early on, and it's an intriguing corporate plot between a few different companies and some side characters who happen to get caught up along the way. I'm not going to spoil anything, but there are a few colorful characters, and for the most part everybody just does their job pretty well. There is a unique storytelling aspect in Gunpoint, whereas the entire story is told through messages on the protagonist's phone, usually in the form of text messages. And this kind of adds a fresh little unique play on things because you can pick what messages you want to send. You can choose who you want to talk to at what time. So it's a pretty fresh storytelling perspective, although not much is really done with the story. There's nothing that I can really say is outstanding about the story or groundbreaking. It's just a really nice, complex corporate espionage, suspense mystery, I guess. It's a very classic noir story, but there's not much groundbreaking here. There's not much amazing here. It's just overall a pretty solid story. Now on to sound. The game Gunpoint has a great soundtrack that matches the mood perfectly. It's very sparse, and there's not a lot of music, and it's not very overt. It's a very subtle soundtrack, but it fits very well with the game, and it's a very good soundtrack. It gets a little bit I almost want to say repetitive at times. It's a lot of mystery music and a lot of just stealth. Almost jazzy stealth music, like there's lots of bass going on, and I think I even heard like a pan flute or something. But yeah, the soundtrack fits, but again, it's fresh, but nothing really amazing, nothing that makes you go, wow, it just fits very well. The graphics, since it is a 2D side-scroller, it is also actually done in an 8-pixel type, or like an 8-pixel type setting, like an 8-bit system type thing, although the backgrounds are pretty detailed. The graphics, again here, they're very fresh and they're very nice, but it's not groundbreaking. They fit very well, just like the soundtrack, but there's a lot that could have been done. Well, not actually much that could have been done. It just doesn't feel that amazing to me. Lastly, we'll talk about some gameplay for Gunpoint. Most of the gameplay in Gunpoint is using the crosswire and the bullfrog pants to set up levels and steal data in the form of computer hacking, or maybe stealing a product from a rival company. Now, the bullfrog pants allow you to jump extreme distances and break through glass windows, tackle people. You can punch people after you tackle them hilariously like a million times and very fast. And the crosswire's probably the most interesting gameplay mechanic. It allows you to rewire electronics in buildings. So, for instance, you could take a light switch and rewire it to a door if it was a door that you couldn't open previously. So you can hit the light switch and the door opens. Or you can send a guard falling down to their death through a trap door or something. And that's really where Gunpoint shines as far as gameplay, is setting up these levels with the crosslink just how you want them, looking into these buildings and kind of setting everything up so you can plan ahead, and then executing with the bullfrog pants and your the switches that you've rewired so that you can get the data and get out, trying to be as unseen as possible. Now, the enemies in Gunpoint are varied. There's only a few different types, but they help create complex levels that you have to try and solve and set up. They will shoot you, so there is a risk of death, although the checkpoints are every like 1 to 6 seconds. So it's not like you're going to be sent far back, and that kind of diminishes the challenge and brings me to probably the worst aspect of Gunpoint. In the very last level of Gunpoint, the only save you get is at the very beginning of the level, and this is the longest level in the game. There was at one point, and also the hardest actually, so you'll be many retries, and you'll be going back minutes and minutes, and I don't understand why the developers of this game would keep such a consistent checkpoint system until the hardest, longest level in the game, at which point it just becomes frustrating. For instance, I had one save that put me back 500 seconds. That's almost 10 minutes. I mean, that is a little over 8 minutes of gameplay that I had to redo. And this last level, I mean, I wouldn't have minded it so much if I could have accomplished something and then retried from the beginning, or like only 5 or 6 seconds later, but I had to go all the way back from the beginning of the level, and it was the only level where they did that, and that was kind of frustrating at that point that they made that change just for the last, longest, hardest level of the game. Again, as with most of the aspects of Gunpoint, this game, although it does bring a few new ideas to the table and it is fairly innovative, there's too much shallowness to the gameplay that it gets very boring very quickly, because the how you set up levels is almost the same throughout every level. And although the setting may change, you're kind of doing the same things over and over, so it does get boring fairly quickly. And there are upgrades to the game that you can buy with money earned from missions. There's a couple upgrades you get. You get one upgrade point after each level that you complete to upgrade your jumping with the bullfrog, or the speed at which you charge it, or some energy cells that you get to use different things. But all in all, it just feels very shallow. All the upgrades seemed very... I didn't try them out in my playthrough, but I have tried them out before, and they're not really that impactful on gameplay, and some of them are even very confusing and not very useful at all. So in that aspect, the gameplay is very very shallow, and it gets boring pretty quickly, but the game is only 2.5 hours long, which it doesn't get too boring, but again, I paid $15 for a game that's 2.5 hours long. Not really worth it. So overall, Gunpoint is a good indie game with a cool setting, but it is rather short and boring near the end, and there's kind of a shallowness through all the aspects of the game that even though they fit very well, it doesn't feel like there's actually much substance to the game. It's cool that there's such an open-ended gameplay mechanic, and you can do whatever you want and how you finish levels, but in the end it's kind of boring, and unless you want to artificially increase the difficulty for yourself, there's not much challenge to the game, and there's really no reason to revisit it after you've completed it. So all in all, I'll give Gunpoint a 7. It's a good game, and it does a couple innovative things, but in the end it's just too short, too shallow. It's not a very expansive game. It's very narrow, and it does what it sets out to do, and it's a good game, but it's not great. As always, this has been Cameron. I hope you enjoyed this review. Tell me what you think in the comments. Anything I could have done better, things I did good. That's it for this review. Bye.